know how to finish? Because I'm not going to put the real
Yeah.
so
Yeah, no. Yeah. It's fine. All right, so today is the 4th of February, 2021, and I qualify as a Phase 1A healthcare worker. So I qualify for a vaccine. For the past 3 weeks, I've been waitlisted to get a vaccine, and finally I was able to get an appointment, I think 2 days ago. It was emailed to me that they had openings on Wednesday and Thursday, so the 3rd and 4th. I was able to finally get an appointment, because usually whenever I try to get those, they're all filled up, so they fill up quite quickly. So today I drove down to the San Mateo Event Center, which was about a 20-minute drive from my first kid, so it wasn't too bad. My appointment was right at 12:45. You don't have to show proof that you made the appointment. It's really just to space the lineup and also to count how many vaccines they have available. You can go if you're waitlisted, but you're not guaranteed one. I was waitlisted the first 2 times I tried, and I didn't even bother going because usually they send an email saying, hey, we have so many vaccinations left over, you can come on in. It's not really worth it otherwise. So today I arrived right at about 12:43, drove straight into the convention center. There's a whole row of cones and it's all lined up, and then there's the two like toll booths almost, because it's for the parking area realistically. So on a regular event in that area, you'd pay to park there, but instead they're asking like, are you doing Sutter Health or are you doing San Mateo County? So for me it was San Mateo County. Then they direct you depending on which one you answer. A majority of people do San Mateo County. Sutter Health is through another thing. I was only able to do this because my manager actually sent me the link. It appears to be some sort of like invitation only thing, so it definitely matters. Like in their questionnaire they say, I agree that I received this directly from like my manager or someone qualified. So they basically snaked us along, and towards the entrance they have 2 sections that you can drive into, and there's a person who's directing traffic into both, and it just looked like he was evening people out. It was really just for spacing reasons. And he's holding a sign that says windows up, masks on. So I got there at 12:43-ish. And then the moment I got the needle in my arm was 1:13, I believe. That actually means, I'm pretty sure I spent about 20 minutes just waiting in line in the cars. And then I drove up and waited approximately 10 minutes inside the actual event center. When you reach the gate just in front of the event center, they say like no filming, no video to respect privacy. Like I was taking pictures the whole time, and then that's when I put it away. But basically as soon as you pass the gate threshold, you have a person with a clipboard come up and they say like, do you have an appointment? Can I see your ID? And if you have multiple people in the car, they actually would redirect you to a different line, unless there was something else. I couldn't quite tell because I was the only person in my car. So I was directed to go into the event center, which I did. There's plenty of stop signs and cops and whatnot. I should note, on the outside of the event center, there's a bunch of semis, like trucks. They're just plain white, which was a little weird. They were just lining the outside of the parking space, and then on the other side of the event center is just rows of fire trucks and some police escort cars, and I was kind of surprised at that. When I went in, there's rows of tables, right, and they all had like a red biohazard bin. They had a large trash can next to them, and then they had like smaller plastic cases on them that held the vials that held the vaccines. They had cotton swabs and balls. They had tons and tons of boxes of bandages, and then another like waste, sort of like a smaller waste bin on the tabletop as well. Basically, so I went in, I showed my ID a second time, and then that time the guy was writing something down, and I found out he was writing it on my vaccine immunization record card that I'm going to keep. And it basically just says what I got, which was the Moderna vaccine, when I got it, and what case it was part of. So like each case of vaccine has its own distribution number, so if anything happens, they know where to look. And then they also have a space for the second vaccine, which I'll get to later, but they have a clear space, and I'm gonna have to go back and get a second dose of the vaccine. So he puts all that underneath my windshield wiper, because our windows are not open. And as soon as I actually get to it, I noticed that there is a firefighter, or I thought he was an EMT at first. But there's a firefighter. He's talking to the people in the car in front of me. He gives 2 doses. He's prepping everything by himself. He's wearing just a pale blue surgical mask. He's got a baseball cap on. His name was Jared, for what it's worth. He's cool. He drove up and he was like, okay, as I prepare your vaccine, I just need to ask you, like, have you ever had any allergic reactions? Is this your first vaccination? Are you on any blood thinners, kind of deal? As soon as I answered no to all those, they also double check and make sure that the left arm is okay, because if it's not, then you can go to a different one. We're just kind of like chit-chatting. It doesn't take too long. I just roll up my sleeve, put my arm pretty much on the outside of my window, because, you know, I roll down my window when I'm talking to him. I was wearing 2 masks. I always wear 2 masks. And then I was actually wearing a face shield. It's one that work provided me just to add that extra layer of protection. It does make it harder for people to hear you. So Jared was saying what a lot when I asked him stuff. But basically I was like, oh, so like, are you an EMT? He's like, no, I'm a paramedic. I work at the fire department. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So have you like done this a lot? Like, how long are your work days? And he was like, well, for the vaccination, we're working 8 to 10 hours a day. And I was like, oh, you know, like, I hope you're getting lunch. He's like, lunch is provided. We're getting our breaks, you know, like, we're all well taken care of. We're all vaccinated, you know, so we're doing what we can. I kind of jokingly asked him, I was like, so did med school ever prepare you for doing a drive-through vaccination setup? And he was like, no, they didn't really role play this one. There was a lot of different role plays and this was not on the menu. And so after everything was said and done, he said 3, 2, 1. Put in the shot. It felt just like any other shot. There was no difference to it. And then he immediately put the Band-Aid on it after pressing the cotton on it. He explained that I was going to drive out to an observation area. I went into the first row, which meant I was closest to the entrance. And so to drive to the observation area, I had to drive through the entire event hall. So I had to cut off a lot of people, unfortunately, but I was like driving down. Every table was pretty much the same. Every person was wearing a surgical mask. There were varying amounts of people in their cars. You have to make sure as soon as you're in the event hall, if you have to stop for more than 5 seconds, you have to turn off your engine to make sure that there's plenty of airflow. So that was fine. The event hall is pretty big. So they were doing, I would say, at least 8 to 10 stations per row, and there was more than 1 row, definitely more than 1 row. And then in the far corners, there was a break area for all the paramedics. There was coffee and some napkins and some boxes, which I would assume had food in it. Anyway, so they had clear signs, and then they had guys that you kind of see on tarmacs, like the long orange flags. And they were all wearing masks, and some of them were wearing like goggles, like glasses, and they were just directing traffic. So I was funneled into a row. It had those movable gates that you usually see that segregate like concert goers from like the stages and stuff. And they had us lined up in rows of 10 at a time. And on each windshield wiper, under each windshield wiper, every paramedic wrote down the time that the dose was administered. There were people in yellow vests that were going through, and they were checking the times. And basically everyone who was in the same time frame seemed to go within the same row. So we would all chill, and despite us being kind of close, because we were kind of jam-packed, some people were kind of opening their windows just to let the air breathe, because it was a pretty sunny day, admittedly. But everyone was kind of advised, like, keep your windows up if you can. If not, then make sure your masks are on. And so I was set there. They told me I was going to be released at 1:28, so exactly 15 minutes afterwards. And if you had any adverse reactions, they instructed you to honk. It's kind of like if there's any sort of like rashes or any sort of hives or anything. The guy next to me actually was interesting. He was kind of like leaned over a little bit for longer than you'd think. I think he was looking for something. And when the guy walked by, he like tapped on the window. He was like, hey, are you okay? Are you able to honk your horn? Which obviously through closed window, I could hear that. So he was like yelling it at him. And the guy was like, what? Oh yeah, no, I'm fine. And so like they really were watching you. Like they wanted to make sure that everything was done right. Then as soon as 1:28 popped up, everyone in my row was clear to go. We were all directed out. And one thing that Jared had mentioned, which I asked him, was, do I have to actively go schedule my second vaccine? And he said, no, the county is actually going to contact me about it, because it used to be every 2 weeks. Yeah, so you'd get the first and the second within 2 weeks. Now the latency period is actually 4 weeks, because they're trying to get vaccination for everyone. I need to wait for them, as he stated, 28 days is the standard wait time. Most people are getting it a little after, so I need to just be on the lookout for that email. And the only way I knew that there was anything available was from the county emailing me in the first place saying, hey, set up an appointment. These are all the ones we have available. Every 15-minute increment had 25 available appointment spots. So the fact that those are going really quick at actually it was every 5 minutes, every 5 minute increments. Now that I think about it, yeah, because I could have chosen between 12:45 and 50, so that's a really short one. So they are rolling out the vaccinations really well. The reason why I qualified for San Mateo instead of San Francisco, because I've had more than one person ask me that since I live in San Francisco, is my company is based in San Mateo, so if they did have any questions, I could show them my company badge, specifically because I got access to this from my boss. So since we're working from a company based in San Mateo, that's where I elected to take it. Once again, I had got the Moderna vaccine, which I know is currently a bit more available, although that might change in the future. For the most part, the vaccination itself, like I said, not really painful. About an hour later, the area was kind of numb, which was a little unusual. Like I hit my arm against a wall and my elbow and my shoulder felt it, but like the upper part of my arm was like, it was like nothing happened. It was a very bizarre sensation. And then now, which is about 8 hours later, when I was like lifting stuff, it's actually kind of tender, which I guess is just kind of a natural reaction from getting a vaccine. As far as I recall, anytime I've gotten a vaccine, within a day, it's still a little tender on the at the injection site, so it's not too surprising. So I don't recall having any sort of real issue with it. But we'll circle back once I get my second vaccination. We'll see if it's at the same site. We'll see if anything changes, if there's any further developments with how soon they can get the second dosage to me, or if they decide it's, you know, not necessary or anything like that. So yeah, we'll check back then. So today is March 4th of 2021, and it is about 4 weeks. Actually almost exactly a month, now that I think about it, since the first vaccination shot that I received. I got my second shot today. It was at the same location, San Mateo Event Center. There were significantly less cars this time around. When you drive up, they're like, okay, do you have Sutter Health or the county? So mine was through the county, so went into that lane. At the gate entrances where they like take all your information, they just kept waving us in. As soon as like one car was like inside, and then like there were like 4 or 5 cars right behind them outside, that's when you'd see 4 or 5 people walk up to each car, and you just had to show your ID. Then they're like, okay, just go down to a station. And then they had a ton of people, very similar to those like guys on the tarmacs with the flags again. So they were just like signaling people to go into different stalls. Stalls were set up the same. They're all slanted, much like One Direction parking kind of deal. But it was pretty clear when the one I was going into, and I saw in a few cars ahead of me, the nurse went around on both sides of the car, and she carried the sharps container with her and put it on the chair on the other side. I was anticipating a much longer wait, so I actually went out and I bought a rice bowl and I had to scarf it down really fast because I was waiting. So I arrived right at 12:50, which is my appointment time. I received the shot at 1:10, so the 20 minutes prior to that is really a little bit of stop and go, and then a little bit of like, okay, like show us your ID, let me take your information. So the first people at the very entrance would put the slip of paper on your windshield and then let you go in. And then once you got into a slanted station, another person would come up and say, okay, give me your vaccination card. We will update it. This is your vaccination card. Like, this is your proof you were vaccinated. You don't have anything connected to any of your medical history with this. So you need to keep this. So I had to roll it down my window, just a sliver, slip it out. The girl updated it. She gave it back. She told me to just line up really close behind the other car. There were 2 cars ahead of me, and then once it became my turn, the nurse, her name was Mary, she was lovely, asked for the card so that she could update it and sign it, and then asked me if I had any allergic reactions, which I did. My whole, like, the entire injection area swelled up and felt really hard and hot to the touch. And that's how my body reacts to mosquito bites. And I explained to her, like, I have Skeeter syndrome, so, like, I didn't tell my mom I got the vaccination where I had it, and my mom was under the impression I had a mosquito bite. Like, it behaved the exact same way in my body. And then she was like, oh, okay, interesting. Have you reported this? And I was like, nope. And she goes, okay, on the back of my vaccination card, there's a QR code. And she was like, join the QR code, like scan that, and then report it to the CDC, because this goes straight to the CDC. It's all the data is immediately shared. And then she asked me if I had any food allergies, which is a new question. They've asked if I had hay fever or anything else like that. So this time I was like, yeah, when I was a kid I was allergic to bananas, and then after I hit puberty I became allergic to like peaches and apples and cherries. Like I'm still allergic to cherries. And she was like, okay, just don't eat any of those things today. Which was, I was like, yeah, no, I wasn't planning on it. And she said, all right, well, I'm gonna grab the largest part of the muscle in your arm as to mitigate the side effects of this vaccine. So just rest your arm up here. Are you comfortable? And I was like, yep. I had my cardigan off and mask on, of course, the entire time. And then she kind of like squeezed my arm a little bit to like try to group it up, and then just wiped it with alcohol, gave me the injection, and then just put a band-aid on it real quick. And she was like, okay. So she looked at her watch, wrote down the time on the same windshield paper that I had on my car, and then she was like, all right, just head over straight to the observation area. It's the same as last time. So I was like, all right, you know, thank you. Drove over. She even said, like, before I left, she was like, I don't anticipate you having any sort of adverse effects, but just in case you do, honk your horn in the observation area like last time. Went to the observation area, chilled there. The workers seem to be a lot more chipper this time around, but I think it's because there was a lot less traffic to control. Pretty much everyone who was going there, it was all for the second dose. That was another thing that the nurse asked. She was like, and you are here for the second dose, correct? This is not your first vaccination? And I was like, yeah, that's where I got the card. She was like, good. So it was all second doses, which I think is why it was so limited as to how many people were there, because the second dose is dependent on when you got your first dose and if you got your first dose, right? So there's kind of two dimensions there that are fighting it. So as the time came up, I received a text. I actually received a text an hour before my appointment, and then I received a text right as they were excusing us. And it said, the observation period for your vaccination has passed, you were free to go. Which is interesting, I didn't get that text last time. They were already waving me out. They were like, okay, go ahead, like, and there was one dude who had a San Francisco Giants mask on, and he's kind of a stocky fellow, but he was just like waving and like saluting and like clapping and like bowing, and like just everyone, everyone who was going out, he was like, he's part of the group who was controlling traffic, but he was like saying the last like thank you, which is really cool. I also found out you could use the restroom when you're in the observation area. Someone honked a horn, and then a guy like ran to his car and raised a flag, and then immediately afterwards he turned around and he just yelled, we got one. And people were like, what? And he was just like, restroom count one. And I was like, oh, okay, like someone's going to the bathroom, got it. But yeah, I preemptively requested tomorrow off as a sick day because everyone I've talked to has had some sort of side effect or symptom from the vaccine, and it's usually within 24 hours after receiving the second dosage. So we will see what happens, but so far I'm feeling fine. The site of injection is actually, it hurts less than like the first injection was like a little numb. This is like nothing happened. Like even the injection itself was very minimal. Like I didn't really feel anything. So yeah, no, it was just pretty standard, nothing too scary. We'll see if any symptoms happen over the next 24 hours, and I'll touch base probably the day after tomorrow, just to let you guys know what's going on. So yeah, till then. Alright, so it is March 9th, 2021, and as you can tell, it's been quite a few days. Today is Tuesday. I received my second vaccination on Thursday, so it's been about 5 days-ish, since I got my vaccination. In the last checkup, it was day of, I was doing great. I finished all my clients that day, and I took a shower, went to bed, no issues, no concerns falling asleep. Tender a little bit at the injection site as per usual for any injection, but then in the morning I woke up at I think like almost 6 or 7:30 a.m. and I was totally fine, and I was like, man, why did I cancel work today? I could have done all my clients, could have done my meetings, and I would have been fine. And then that's when it started to hit me. When I was trying to move around in my bed, I was feeling super achy, and then came the headaches. I was like, oh god, like I never get headaches. It's very rare that I do. So when I do get them, they hurt a lot because I'm just not used to them. And so I started feeling like really pounding headaches, really achy joints, started feeling flu-like symptoms, you know, where you kind of like your head's in a bit of a fog. The fever started to build like far quicker than I thought it would. Pretty much by noon, it was like I was hit by a train. Like I really didn't want to move. I had really, really bad shivers. Like I felt super cold from noon of that day until midnight. Like it felt like I was frozen. And no matter what I did, I was sweating as well. So I was shivering, sweating. I didn't feel warm at all. When my boyfriend came home at 6 p.m. or 5 p.m. to take my temperature, I was at 102.4, primarily because I was huddled under all of our winter blankets because I was so cold. And it just, everything hurt. I didn't want to move, my shoulders hurt, my neck hurt, my back hurt, and if I moved too fast, I would get really dizzy really fast. And a headache would ensue. So I had I had cereal for breakfast, and then I had a couple pieces of pizza for lunch. I was starving. That's another thing. From when I ate cereal at 12, and then when I ate pizza at 2 or 3, it felt like I ate nothing during that time. Absolutely, I was so hungry even after I ate the cereal. It was crazy. And then by dinner time, I just needed food. I was like, nope, I need as many things as possible in my mouth. So my brother made some rice porridge for me, and I started eating. I ate all of it. I was super hungry, made myself an extra sandwich, and I was still cold, but my fever had gone down tremendously. Specifically, right after my boyfriend took my temperature and it was 102.4 at 5 p.m., he gave me a Tylenol and told me to, just take some blankets off and just kind of relax even though I was frozen. I fell asleep, I think, 6 or 7 times throughout the day, just kind of laying around, just relaxing. And then the next day, which was Saturday, my body was still in a lot of pain. My fever was more or less gone. I woke up at 6 a.m. the next day, I think I took my temperature, it was 100 degrees flat. So still a fever, but not much. When we had taken my temperature just before I went to bed at around midnight the night before, my temperature crawled to 101. And so it was kind of going up and down and up and down. It primarily went down after I took a cold shower, go figure, to 100. And then it went back up to 101. I went to bed, woke up, it was 100. And then I just kind of went back to bed, woke up I think at 10, and my temperature was just about 98.7, so it was cooling down quite a bit, but it still hurt to move. Everything hurt. I still had a lot of headaches, my fever was gone, but everything else kind of stayed with me. So throughout Saturday, I couldn't do anything either. It really sucked. Even if I turned my head too fast, it was a pounding headache in my head. I canceled my work on Sunday morning. I canceled it at 6 p.m. on Saturday because I was like, if my headaches and stuff are not gone by now, I can't have any faith that it's not going to be gone in the morning. Sure enough, Sunday morning, still achy. My neck and shoulders were absolutely killing me. No fever, headaches kind of gone, but still, once again, sudden movements. Sensitivity to light, actually, as well. Things were too bright for me sometimes in my room, which is never an issue. I'm very used to lots of natural light. I prefer having light in my areas. So it was really weird for me to close everything and turn things off really fast. Even when I was walking through the house, I would avoid the brighter areas just because it hurt to look at a little bit. And so my head was just not dealing with it well. I'd get dizzy really fast. Monday, I just took a Tylenol in the morning because my shoulders were still really stiff, and so was my neck. My back was a little better. Took a Tylenol and went to work. Did what I could, just took it easy with my kids, which are my clients. By last night, I was doing okay. This morning I woke up, didn't need to take a Tylenol. Things are more or less back to normal. My neck and shoulders are still a little stiff. My head is not well enough for me to play spins with a lot of my kids. I used to spinning and jumping and turning really fast with kids. Not doing that because I still feel somewhat sensitive to it. So it's taking me a few days of getting rid of all these symptoms. I'm still 100% glad that I got the second dose. I'm really happy that I have it. I'm definitely reporting my symptoms to the CDC, as the nurses all say, if you have anything that lasts more than a day, please contact the CDC and let them know what's going on. It was quite the experience. I'm still not entirely over it. I'm definitely on the end of it though, tail end of the experience. But if you do have the option to get a vaccine, please do. I don't care if it's the Pfizer or the Johnson & Johnson or Moderna. Once again, I got the Moderna, which everyone says the second dose is kind of what knocks you off your off your feet. And so just be well, be safe, and I really hope that you get vaccinated as soon as humanly and safely possible. Don't let my experience scare you or anything. My body rejects a lot of different things. It reacts to a lot of different elements very poorly. Oh, one thing I didn't mention is my first vaccine, my first injection, swelled really bad. My second one, not so much. I can touch it. It doesn't hurt the arm. I can lift it. Although the day immediately after my vaccination, I didn't want to lift anything. But this one, I can touch it and it's not hard. It doesn't feel super duper hot like the first one did. Although I will reiterate, the nurse specifically said she would put it in the thickest part of my arm in order to mitigate any like side effects. So she did a good job. It's definitely not hitting my skin nearly as hard as the first one did. I hope you guys thought this experience was interesting, very different, and not one that I thought I'd experience in my lifetime. Hopefully we can get rid of this COVID sooner rather than later and get back to life as normal.